What is going on? You're live. See if anybody comes in here. I doubt it. Daniel Anami, you were actually first without saying first. Light bright. You're not a morning person? I am a morning person. It's one of my annoying qualities of me. That I am annoying. That I am a morning person. It annoys everything. Big Rig Radio Network. Jeff, what's up? Scott, SRO Logistics. I'm going to call you today, Scott. Anthony T, James Best, who's ignoring me. One, how was it? Well, I'm going to give you my thoughts. Wiggle Wagon Pat. Now, I missed some of it because I was on a phone call. That seems par for the course. I'm always on the phone. You had Lil Dog hosting it, the trucking exec, trucker's coach, Spectre, James Rogers. You had Hensley. Make Sense was in there for a minute. D-Raj was in there for a minute. And, Big Eddie was in there. And am I missing somebody? Oh, Yukon. Yukon was in there. Yep. So here's my thoughts on it. You had basically 7 or 8, however many people I counted out, right? Look, wow, what's up, Ron? You weren't invited last night, Jeff? Well, I'll get to that in a second, Jeff. Trucking exec had probably the best advice out of all of them. He basically said that, because Will ask him about strategy. What is the perfect strategy in this market? And trucking exec said something very profound. He said the same strategy you would have when the market is up. And basically, you always have to think like a business. You always have to put things in place to keep you going, to keep you moving, to keep the revenue up, to keep the profit up, and that nature. And it was good advice. And the other aspect of the whole roundtable is that you had all different kinds of how they built their business. D-Raj has trucks with the carrier. Hensley's got trucks with Landstar. Yeti's got his own trucks, his own authority. James Rogers has his own trucks, his own authority. Then you had Coach, and then you had, Make Sense was in there. Sammy was in there, which I had a really good conversation with Sammy yesterday on the phone. And the other thing about what they all do, because everybody has a different plan. That's the thing. The whole roundtable had a different plan, and how they do business. And that's the thing about trucking is I gotta watch time. That's how you do trucking, man. There are 1,000 different ways to do this, right? And if you work the spot market, you got to have a certain skill set. If you work contract freight, you got to have a certain skill set. If you have a carrier that has a combined contract and spot, you work a certain way. If you are part of a mega carrier leasing out trucks, subleasing, like I think that's what D-Raj is doing, and kind of what Hensley's doing with Landstar, that's another skill set. That's another mindset. So I haven't seen him in here in a while, but Jesse, um, he does that. He leases his trucks on to other companies and then lets them do all the payroll, and then he just takes a certain percentage of that. Everybody has their strategies. And the one thing that they all had in common, the guys that were most successful in the circle, is they all had this really good work ethic. They had you have to have the fortitude to kind of always be scheming, always be, not scheming, that's a bad word, like strategizing. That's a good word. Always moving forward, always working towards your goal, and when something doesn't work, you switch it up and all that. And it was a fairly good discussion. Now, with Jeff not being there, and it was understandable that Jeff wasn't there because he's dealing with a lot at home. Those of you who don't know, Jeff's wife had surgery, so he's dealing with that. And I don't really think that, I don't, if Jeff was invited, I don't blame him for not taking it because, half this panel have gone to bashing him in the past. So why would you want to enter a circle that, half the people bash? So, I know I don't want to be involved in a circle that bashes me. So, but it was a good discussion. However, it did fly off the rails a couple of times, and for some freaking reason, there are people that kept bringing up Red Viking Trucker in the comments. Red Viking Trucker's not a business owner. Red Viking Trucker is out there in the oil fields. He's not even dealing with regular freight, and what do you think of his personal life? It doesn't matter, and if he's a horrible person, he's a horrible person. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. But the fact that he's on everybody's mind, he's on everybody's tongue, it just baffles me because that is obsession. There are far more important people to hate in this world. And, eventually if the guy doesn't have his act together, he'll be out. And then he'll be history. If he does have his act together, then all he's going to do is prove that he could be in your heads for a very long time. So there's my 2 cents about that. No one can drop that. And so, like every other YouTube video in the trucking world, the term RVT literally just taints the whole situation. We're having an honest discussion about how to strategize your business and what your model is and good work ethic. And then the crowd doesn't care. The crowd that was watching was the ones that were bringing up RVT. And it's just like, man, it is obsession. And when you're obsessed in somebody like that, there's, I don't know, is it a crush? What the hell? So, but, it tainted this live feed if you think about it. But I had to say something about it because, the problem with public roundtables, the problem with town hall meetings, the problem with doing a YouTube video about a certain discussion is that it could fly off the rails with people bringing up subjects that have nothing to do with anything. Some people try to make it a political discussion. Some people try to make it a, as I said before, an RVT discussion. Other people were putting their 2 cents in the comments that were either helpful or like, why are we even here talking, And is that ginger magnetism? And that's one of the problems when people are trying to solve a problem or what they perceive as a problem is that sometimes they don't get it. You know what I mean? It's like they're looking at the small details without looking at the big picture. And that is how, in my opinion, you deal with any business. I have a friend of mine who owns a store and he's getting ready to go out of business. And some of it's climate and some of it's decisions that he made on how he establishes his money, his debt, his capital and all that. And it's all about strategizing. Trucking is a business, and the people that had the most business mindset in this roundtable, they're the ones that are doing the best. The people that had the best work ethic and business sense in that roundtable are the ones doing the best. And Jeff would have been a good addition to the roundtable because he is also successful, and he had more experience than all of them in doing this. But people are more focused on whatever bankruptcies Jeff have. People are more focused on RVT. People are more focused on details that have absolutely nothing to do with the discussion. And there lies the problem with using YouTube and the internet as your source, as your only source of information. And it's it's like, instead of tearing another man apart, why don't you tear yourself apart? Look at yourself. Look at how can I improve? Don't tell me, I'm not going to tell you how to improve your situation without knowing your situation, not knowing your past. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. And the biggest point is that you're doing something. It's just like the health thing. As long as you're doing something. And in order to survive what trucking is, and here's the other thing, I keep reading over and over and over that this is a normal cycle, that this is a normal situation. And it wasn't until the very end that someone brought up the Amazon situation, which has the capabilities of disrupting all of it. Because what some people may not realize is that the moves that Amazon is doing now is a Trojan horse to get into, and I posted the article on my SnowLord Facebook page. It is a Trojan horse to get into a third-party logistics brokerage. Amazon will easily take over all the brokerages, or a lot of them. Mom and pops are going to be swallowed up, and it's going to be an Uber style thing that's going to save rates on the shipper side. And as we're seeing right now, the rates are not going to increase for the driver side. What a lot of people don't realize is Amazon is a powerful entity. The only one that, like, Walmart has said, wow, we got to do something about this, right? And they make strategies and moves to progress and to take over and to literally engulf each industry that they're in. If you guys thought Uber was bad, Uber, they have good paying freight. And it's interesting to see the Facebook posts where, they got such cheap freight. Well, yeah, in certain areas they do. They follow the market trends just like any other brokerage. And that's all Uber is a brokerage. All the click and go apps are just brokerages. It's just a different platform on how they give you a load. And that should be an article of discussion by itself. But the point is that there are people that say that in 2007, 2009, rates really, really crashed, right? And so what we're seeing is a market correction, is that it's always changing. You can sit there and call us a good market. You can sit there and call us a fair market. You can sit there and call us a down market. But the reality is it's today's market, and you have to strategize for how do you deal with it now, but also how do you preserve the future and what's going to come up. If you're riding a roller coaster for the first time, you don't know the dips and the turns and and all that stuff, right? But once you've ridden that roller coaster a couple of times, guess what? You can anticipate the ups, you can anticipate the downs, you can anticipate the loopy loops. and be prepared for it. And that's essentially all business is, not just trucking, business in general. Whether you're selling pancakes at a restaurant, uh, comics at a comic book store, or driving a truck down the road hauling freight. And it was interesting to see the 8 or 9 different personalities that were on there and how they've managed to adapt to each situation. You know what I mean? And so like where you have like let's I saw James bring up Uber again. Let's say that you see the rates that Uber has and it works for you, right? And you can utilize it. You don't care where you go, and you can always be loaded in a click and go app system similar to Snyder. So what do? You strategize on how can I make Uber work for me? How can I utilize that tool to run my business? You might get a good 3 months of doing nothing but Uber loads, and you're going to do okay. And proof is one of our top contractors. That's what he does. It's all about using the tools that are in front of you. People criticize Jeff for using a factoring company, but he's using it as a tool to help his company. And if it didn't help the company, he wouldn't use it. Just like the truck. People think the truck's the only tool. The truck and the cell phone. No, it's this truck, the cell phone, where you put yourself in relationships with brokers. It's like people are saying, well, you got to get direct freight. You got to get contract freight. Well, that's a good strategy. But if you don't have those abilities yet, what's the next best thing? Find a broker that can keep you moving. Find a broker that knows how you work, how you think, how you bid, and then utilize that as a tool. The loan I'm on now is a broker that 80% of my stuff is done through. And so the load boards, I've barely used them. Now I still use them to a certain extent, because I don't want to get rusty on that. And I have no problem negotiating with brokers. But I like a lot of the apps that are out there because it gives me the times. It gives me it gives you every information. Uber will give you the name of the customer, the address, the whole 9 yards. So you can look at a load. Oh, wow, that's like a little mom and pop grocery store in the middle of Chicago. I ain't doing that load. You could see that stuff. But just like there's a million trucking strategies, there's a million tools out there to use. Now, I would love to get into this Sonar thing because I know the guys that are using it are making some money. But all it is information. It's a huge amount of information, and if you utilize that tool correctly, it will help you. Just like the DAP board has in the 123 load boards, they have the hot market maps. They have 123 is toll calculators, and there's an abundance of tools in these load boards in themselves. And the more tools you have, the more information you have, the more you can strategize. But see, it takes a certain mindset to do that, and that's the bottom line. And that's what Trucking Exec was talking about, was that mindset. And that's what you have to have out here. If you're an owner operator and you don't have that mindset, whether you're leased on with Prime, Schneider, or you're an owner operator like myself that's leased on to a small company, or if you got your own authority, you always have to be strategizing. You always have to be thinking, and that's it. That's the part of being a business owner in general, is you have to live, eat, and breathe. I haven't had any time for my hobbies since I've been doing this. And there's been very little downtime in the sense of like just going home and doing nothing. You know what I mean? Because, you always gotta, you're always working on your numbers. You're always working on, okay, how did this load do? How did I do this month? That kind of thing. And it's a mindset, and that's the thing I got from the roundtable, is that it's the mindset that separates people, and it's exactly what it is. It's nothing different, you know. And if your mindset is in a place where you don't feel it's worth it, then you change. So, all right, let's go with some comments here. Jeff is smart to be on that circle. It would have been Jeff. It would have been good. Two of them were not even owner ops. Next gen, I the moderator for comments. Well, there were moderators, but you know, some of the moderators were obsessed with the RBT stuff. All Jeff has to do is point the scoreboard. He's doing better than all of them from the discussion. Yeah, wiggle wagon, but the problem is that you can't get on there and just like, oh, I'm the most successful, because that's not that kind of guy. But that's the problem with truck drivers. When you go on the Facebook post, everybody's like, oh, you know, I'm doing $3 a mile still, and you're not, because you're an idiot and you take cheap freight. You know, there's always this, you know, chest beating kind of stuff. And so a lot of discussions are, you know, become wasted on the information, because all it does is become chest beating or, you know, degrading. Why were they wearing about somebody else's past and not making sense? Right, Jose, that has nothing to do with that, you know? I mean, Donald Trump, who's president of the United States, who's a billionaire, has had several bankruptcies. So bringing up past failure, you know, not even failures, but past issues does no good, because we're worried about today, we're worried about now. I don't care what the market did 20 years ago, other than look at the trends, and I don't care about people's financial issues. I've never had to file bankruptcy, but I've done the whole max out credit card thing and have to pay that fee, and then, you know, and all that stuff. My credit took it, and I worked really hard to build it back up. So you learn from these expenses. And if a person has a bankruptcy in their past and they learn from it, then what's the harm? Who cares, right? My strategy is to eat, drink, and be happy. There you go. So the only professional trucker YouTuber doesn't repeat himself consistently. I don't know about that. I repeat myself. Yukon, what's up? It played on Juan. It played on Lil Dog's channel. Pale Rider TV. Gary Comden is a great Garth Brooks fan. Too many want to boast and few want to listen. You're right, Gary. Adam Gallagher, what's up? Harold Huffman. How's it going, Harold? So, anyways, I'm gonna give this like 7 more minutes, and then I gotta start my pre-trip. So that's my thoughts on this whole thing. In the end, the only thing I really got out of it was that, and that's a bad comment. But one of the main thing I got out of it there, how's that? Is that if you want to stay home a lot, you have to strategize your business to be able to have that kind of freedom, right? If your goal is to make money for financial stability, then you have to work a different way. If your goal is to have multiple trucks under your authority, you have to work a different way. You know, and I believe that if someone has honest, good intentions and is honest with themselves and with their contractors or with their drivers, if you're a company, you know, if you have company drivers, honesty is huge. Because in the end, you have to rely on these people to help you succeed. You know, I rely on Jeffrey Like to help me succeed. So, and I felt that it was worth it that he had his act together for me to purchase a trailer and sign on with him. I was easily making decent money at Schneider. I did not leave Schneider like because I was upset with him or anything, you know? And Jeff knows how to utilize tools. And he is among the, you know, I have several people I look up to. I have several people that I network with that have way more knowledge than I do. And that's the key as well. You know, if you think that you can't be given any advice, man, that's a loud truck. If you don't have the, like, if you're not willing to learn, then you're going to suffer a little bit. If you feel like you already have all the answers, you're going to suffer a little bit. And the one true fact in truck is there's no one right way. Right. Everyone runs their business different, and how you run it, not necessarily how someone else runs. Good work ethic and smart decisions. And that's Trump's bankruptcies were debt restructuring and venture buyouts, much different than personal bankruptcy. The spot market average is probably going somewhat lower. However, it's the average. There are plenty of us working hard and maintaining above the average. We'll get better in time. Yeah, James Best, it may not get better this month. It may not get better within the year. So how do you strategize? So you got to look at the what ifs, you know, and not you in general, James, but just in general with everybody. You know, I also fell to the fact that I thought that rates were going to come up in spring, and in some ways they have, in some areas they have, in others they haven't. But you have to deal with what is now, and then when you get more than what you need, you're golden. That's pretty much what it is. You got to strategize to give, and sometimes that's a slow process. You know, there are days when I can make $1,000 in a day, and there are days when I'm like, wow, I only got 300. You know, but at the end of the month, how did that perform for me? At the end of the month, how did that do well? That's the key. When I type in my Truckin' Pro program, which, by the way, SA10 discount code for foglinesoftware.com. I know that was shameless. I know that was lame. And the profit loss for each load, and it's amazing how some loads net better than others. You know, and if you know, but then at the end of the month or the end of the week, I can look at the bigger picture on what my profit and loss is, and that's the important part. Is look at your profit and loss and how you got there and what you've done in the past that works and what you've done in the past that didn't work. You know, you got carrier, you know, like Texas is known as a cheap freight area, but you got carriers that do well in Texas. Well, how do they do that? Right? You know, and if you have a person that lives in Florida, you got to strategize on dealing with how the Florida rates are. How do you deal with that? You know, it's a strategy, and it's different for every region that you live in. I live right along a major corridor, so it's a lot easier for me to kind of get stuff going through, but it puts me into Texas, it puts me in Oklahoma. So I thought, well, how do I strategize to get out of those areas when I have to go though? Well, that's where relationships come in. That's where I have emails and calls before I even touch a load board. And why? Because I've given good service, and that's the key, is you got to give good service. And once you do that, then you start getting these emails. You know, I was talking to Sammy the other day, telling about a certain broker that had these certain loads out of his area. I said, dude, I get an email from him every day. He's like, you need to forward that to me. And you know, and I don't think he ever sent me his email, but you know, that has to happen. Some people act as though they have all the answers, yet are struggling. Some people need to drop the ego and be willing to open their ears and listen to new ideas. Spot market. Okay, we already read that. Harold's comment. The roundtable should continue, but they need to stay away from the he said, she said BS, and some need to remember professional courtesy to others instead of calling BS. I agree, Gary, and that's the problem when you get 10 truck drivers together is especially YouTube truck drivers, is what you just said. There's no need to repeat what you just said because it's the truth. Too many trucking experts. I'm not an expert. I have never, ever claimed to be an expert. And I'm just giving my thoughts of what the roundtable. That's why I didn't call in. That's why I didn't, I kind of made a couple of comments. I brought up the Amazon thing, and that's it. I have 2 cents to add here and there, but I went there to learn. Okay, what are these more successful guys than me? What are they doing? And how can I utilize that for myself? And that's the thing, man. I was talking to a Christian trucker one day who's making awesome moves in his business. And he told me that at least once a day he's doing something that goes towards educating himself, whether it be business or health or spirituality. And that is such a good goal to have. Turn the phone off, listen to an audiobook when you're parked instead of getting on YouTube, worry about Red Viking Trucker. Educate yourself. Find something. You might have some answers. You know what I mean? It's work towards a positive goal. I was talking to Sammy about this. Let's say you got a cup of black water, right? Or brown water, dark water, wherever you want to do it. And people think you just dump the cup out, put clean water in. But no, the other way that you can do it is turn the faucet on, let the clean water come through, and eventually that water will become clean. In other words, if you use enough knowledge, then it'll clean the water. And one day, when you least expect it, you look back and you sit there and go, man, wow, okay, here's where I'm at. So anyways, 7:33. I'm behind schedule now. Thanks for watching. Those are my thoughts. I appreciate everybody that contributed. I appreciate the positive comments in here. And you know what? Keep on keeping on. That's all you can do.